I write about motherhood and the stuff that shapes it behind the scenes, things like gender, culture, and power. And it's a conversation I keep having with women, friends, moms at the school gate, women online, women in my DMs, where they say some version of, I don't know why this feels so hard. I love my kids. I wanted this, but I feel constantly overwhelmed. And usually that sentence is followed by guilt or shame, like they shouldn't even be allowed to say it out loud. So today, I just want to talk through why modern motherhood feels so hard, even when you're doing everything right. And this isn't advice, it's more like, let's name what actually is going on. Something I've noticed is that a lot of moms think that they're struggling in a very personal, individual way. Like, I can't cope. I should be more organized. I must be missing some secret that other moms have figured out. And that makes sense because motherhood today is framed as this very personal project. Your pregnancy, your birth choices, your feeding choices, your routines, your mindset, your ability to balance. So when it feels hard, the natural thing to do is to look inward and assume that the problem is you. But the thing is, motherhood has never actually worked like that. It's never just been about individual women coping well enough. Motherhood has always been shaped by the world around it, by how work is organized, by whether care is shared or isolated, by what societies expect from women and what they quietly take from them. And when you zoom out a little bit, just a little bit, you start to see that a lot of what moms are dealing with or feeling right now isn't random. And it isn't because they're failing, it's because the whole setup has changed. I want to be really clear here. This isn't one of those back in the day everything was better conversations, because it wasn't. Women had fewer choices, fewer rights, less autonomy. But there are things built into older ways of living that make motherhood or made motherhood more bearable, even when life was objectively harder. For most of human history, mothers didn't raise children alone in nuclear households. Care was shared across extended family, neighbors, older children, and other women. You saw other people mothering all the time. You weren't expected to invent motherhood from scratch by yourself using social media and Google. Domestic work was visible, and childcare was normalized. And most crucially, motherhood wasn't treated as a private hobby that you chose and therefore had to manage entirely on your own. So, fast forward to now, and motherhood has been pushed completely, almost completely, into the private sphere. You're at home, you're often physically alone, you're doing work that never ends, and that resets every single day, and that nobody really sees unless it's not done. And at the same time, you're told you're empowered, you have choices, you can do anything. That all sounds positive, but it comes with a catch. Because if you can do anything, then when it's hard, the blame quietly lands on you. This is where I think a lot of women feel confused, but they can't quite articulate why. We were raised on this idea that women can have it all: education, careers, motherhood, fulfillment, independence. But what doesn't get said very often is that the systems around motherhood didn't change enough to support that promise. So instead of care becoming more collective or work becoming more flexible in a meaningful way, what's actually happened is that women just started doing more. Paid work didn't disappear, motherhood didn't get lighter, domestic labor didn't evaporate, emotional labor didn't shrink. It's all just piled up. And because it happened gradually, and because it was wrapped in the language of empowerment and choice, it didn't feel like something we were allowed to question. So now you have mothers who are working, they're parenting, managing households, remembering everything, regulating everyone's emotions, and they still feel like they're somehow not doing enough. And instead of asking, is this too much for one person, the question becomes instead, why can't I cope with this? This is the part that so many women struggle to explain, even to their partners. It's not just the physical tasks, it's the constant mental load, knowing that the kids need new shoes, they need to remember school events, they're tracking food, moods, appointments, laundry, birthday parties, permission slips, medicines, bedtime routines. Most of this work doesn't look like work. There's nothing to tick off at the end of the day. Nothing is finished. Nothing's complete. And because women are often socialized to be good at this stuff, it gets treated as personality rather than labor. You're just organized. You're just better at it. You're just more nurturing. But when labor is treated as natural, it becomes invisible. And invisible work is the easiest work to overload. So you end up tired in a way that's hard to justify, even to yourself. You've been busy all day, but you can't point to anything concrete and say, oh, this is why I'm exhausted. And that disconnect messes with your head. When a system doesn't work, but everyone around you is acting like it's normal, you start to assume that the problem is you. So mothers optimize themselves, they buy planners, they tweak routines, they wake up earlier, they try harder to be calm, they consume endless content about doing motherhood better. And when none of that fixes the underlying exhaustion, the shame starts to creep in. Because if other women are coping and you're not, then something must be wrong with you. But here's the thing I really want to point out here: feeling overwhelmed in a system that demands constant output with very little support isn't weakness. It's more like a normal human response. So that feeling of heaviness isn't a personal flaw of yours. It's information. It's your body and your mind telling you this is too much for one person to carry. I think one of the most quietly damaging things about modern motherhood is how alone women feel in their struggle, even when they're surrounded by people. So if you've been feeling like motherhood is harder than you expected, harder than you think you're allowed to admit, I want you to know that there are real reasons for that. So, in this channel, I'm going to keep having these conversations about motherhood, about womanhood, about power, culture, and the stuff that shapes our lives in ways that we're rarely taught to name. Not to tell you how to live, of course, but more to help you understand what you're actually responding to. So, if this feels like a conversation you didn't realize you needed, you're very welcome here.